Well, hello there. Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Ryan of Nerd Culture. Thank you so much for joining us on this special episode of our continuing saga known as the Interview Series. Tentative title, still kind of working on it. But thank you all for joining us. Joining us here on this episode is a legendary voice actor who has been a hero to many kids of many generations. If you grew up watching Saturday morning cartoons, you may be familiar with series such as Mask, or if you're familiar with video games, you may be familiar with Metal Gear Solid, Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, Beetleborgs Metallics, and a host of others. He has voiced hundreds and hundreds of characters over the years. He is the one and only Doug Stone. Doug, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm pretty good, thank you very much. Thank you for the very nice introduction. I'm also much taller and younger than I look on camera. I just want to make sure everybody knows that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thanks for being with us. Now, before we get started with the questions we have for you here today, Doug has something he would like to share with you. For those of you watching here live, watching at home, Doug, take it away.
Thanks much. Yeah, if you're a voiceover fan and also an animal advocate, as well as doing voiceover work, and I'm still active in that business, of course, I sit on the board of a no-kill cat shelter. And as part of our fundraising activities, every year, this is our second one, we do a Voices for the Voiceless online auction on Bidding Owl. And I get folks from all over, Mindy Sterling, Michael Bell, Steve Bloom, all kinds of, Karen Strassman, all kinds of very well-known actors who contribute swag to the auction. And we auction it off online, and all the profits go to the shelter. All of it goes towards our life-saving efforts. We're a no-kill shelter that specializes in helping the cats that are out on the streets, getting them neutered and fixed so they don't keep having babies, or getting them socialized so they can be adopted, etc. So it's a really cool auction where everybody can bid. It's open until September 15th on Bidding Owl, Voices for the Voiceless. And again, you get some really cool stuff. We also are doing outgoing, some of the actors, like myself, are doing outgoing messages that you can bid on an outgoing message in that character's voice for your answering machine. So you've got that forever, and you've got the actual actor who created the character doing the voice for you. So that's available out there for all you voiceover fans. Check it out. You might find one of your favorite characters is on there. Thanks much.
That sounds wonderful. We look forward to seeing how that goes. We'll make sure to put that in the description of this video. We'll also put it on our Facebook page. I'll put it on my Facebook page, get the word out there, try to support you and your fellow actors and everyone working with the organization as best we can. So let's dive right into this, shall we? You know, it seems like it was destined for this interview to be on a Saturday, considering you were on one of the most talked about and fan favorite cartoon series of the 80s, specifically Mask. But before we get to Mask, I want to ask you, what was it that inspired you to become a voiceover actor?
It's a strange set of circumstances, really. I grew up in Canada, and in my time growing up in Canada, it was very difficult to make a living as an actor of any kind. Certainly, you couldn't make your living as a voiceover actor. That was just a way to supplement your income. So when I went into the business full time, I was a stage actor. I started to do some on-camera work. And what I had discovered was that I was made my own demo, which was horrible, but at the time, not bad, which I'd thrown out there to all these different malls and studios and whatever. And I picked up a little bit of voiceover work. Primarily, I was doing commercials initially, and it supplemented my income. And because I could do a variety of accents, I got picked up by a client who did all the commercials for a mall. So at Halloween, I'd be Frankenstein, or a vampire, I'd be Santa Claus, I'd be etc. And it was supplementing my income. So that got it. And my dad was a radio announcer, so I already knew about voiceover work, and I'd done some radio drama as a little kid. I'd done amateur theater as a kid. So I had it in the back of my mind that, great, this is in Canada, a nice way to supplement your income as an actor. Of course, never make your living doing it. But I loved it. I really enjoyed it, and I seemed to have a facility for it, and learned mic technique, et cetera, while I was sort of starting out in Canada. I was doing a live action shoot for a half-hour, sort of like a Tales of Terror kind of thing, where I was the lead in this film, a short film. And the cinematographer, who was very experienced, took me aside and said, "You're a very good actor. Who's your agent?" I didn't have a great agent. He very kindly recommended me to one of Toronto's top agencies. They signed me on based on his recommendation. coincidentally, within 6 months, a company from Los Angeles, in partnership with a company from France and Canada, reached out to only 2 or 3 agents in Canada, and this new agency I was with was one of them. And they were doing a cartoon series that was going to record in LA called Mask, Mobile Armored Strike Command. The new agent, who thought of me primarily as a on-camera and stage guy, remembered that I told him, "Oh, I'm supplementing my income with voiceover, and I can change my voice and do a lot of different accents and voices." And he thought, "Oh, better get that new guy to audition." I auditioned several times in Toronto, got, I think, 3 roles to begin with. I think for those who know Mask, it was Matt Tracker, Hondo, and Bruce, I believe. Bruce Sato, I think, were the first 3. And a lot of auditions back and forth because they didn't know me. And they wanted to make sure I was directable. And I got the roles. They were being done under Canadian contracts, although they were recording in Los Angeles. And it was expat Canadians in Los Angeles, the rest of the cast. So I flew down to LA, did the show, ended up doing 8 characters, ended up that both the people doing the show and the studio owner at that time, who's passed on now, Kenny, all took me aside and said, "You're good enough to work in LA." I said, "To work as a voice actor in Los Angeles?" I hadn't even dreamed of it. I hadn't even considered that possibility. And they said, yeah, you might want to think about staying. So I did. I took the chance, took the money I'd earned from the Mask show and invested in myself. I was able to get an agent, able to get rolling in LA, and off it took. I was still doing stage work in LA for about 5 or 6 years. A little bit of on-camera auditions, gradually left them behind, and just by 1990 or 91, it was strictly voiceover. And at that point, I started directing and casting and just getting involved in all aspects of voiceover. So that's the story.
Wow, that is an incredible journey. Now, going with the Mask series, did you have any thought that Mask would be the success that it was when it first started airing its episodes in 1985? Did you think it would be this massive, big fan following and still talked about X amount of years later?
I think I can speak for all the cast in saying that we had no idea. Shows come and go, both animation and live action. They'll put on pilots for comedy shows that last 2 or 3 episodes and they're gone. And so we really had no idea. It did look like they'd done a lot of preparation with the characters. I thought the characters were well defined. There was a lot of differences between them. So I think we were all hopeful, of course, and felt like they'd done a good job of preparation. But we couldn't imagine the success it would become. And certainly never, and I really do think I'm speaking for all of us in the conversations we had then, and I'm still friends with everybody now, the conversations we still have, we never imagined. It's 1985-6. We're talking 36, 34, 35 years later. Never had any inkling. Of course, we didn't know what the internet, computers and the internet didn't exist at that time, which of course has helped permeate it. Now there's fan clubs and people around the world can share their interest in anything their heart's in. So we never pictured it. Our hope was that, wow, hopefully this will run for a couple of years and then it'll go into reruns, and hey, who knows? Maybe it'll catch on and maybe it'll lead to more work for us with other cartoons. And it was just mainly hopeful. But I don't think we ever dreamt of the success it would be as far as longevity goes.
Well, in your mind, where the series went, there's been other things. Mask has been adapted into comics. It has its toy line, and that's, the toy line is still selling like crazy. I'm in a part of a few Facebook toy collector groups, and I see people sharing and talking about and selling their Mask toys all over the place. So that thing, the Mask fandom isn't going anywhere anytime soon. My question to you is this: where do you think the character that you portrayed or voiced on Mask, Matt Tracker, where do you think your character Matt Tracker would be right now in the Mask universe?
If he truly existed in the Mask universe? Well, I guess he'd be he was probably about 30 then, so he'd be about in his mid-60s at this point. I imagine that he might not be as physically active, but if there was really a mask universe, I think he'd be an advisor, a trusted and wise advisor to a group of younger heroes, not actors, younger heroes who might be relying upon him for both his, if he kept up with it, his technical wizardry. He was pretty ahead of his time in the 1980s as far as technical aspects went. And that he'd be an advisor. Maybe he'd go on some of the adventures, but probably not as physically active as he was. But to me, the way Matt Tracker's character was written and portrayed, and the way I felt he was in his essence, I don't think he'd ever stop. I don't see Matt Tracker ever retiring from crime fighting, from fighting the evil forces of the world. I think Matt would still be involved in some capacity with the Mask crew. That's my take on him.
Sure. Excellent. Excellent. Now, if they were to bring this thing back, if Mask were to make a comeback, would you be willing to reprise your role again if they rebooted the series?
I'd love to. I absolutely would love to. Whether it was live action and the camera panned by me and the Mask original Mask actors having a cup of coffee, watching the young heroes go by and going, "Oh, look, good for them," and give us a little Stan Lee, nod of the head. Or whether if it was animated, if we were voicing again. I know the other actors, at least Brendan, Sharon, and Mark, at least, who I speak to quite often, are all on board for coming back in. Whether we were, again, the action people or whether we were the advisory board, even in a cartoon, if we were the advisory board to younger heroes. I picture if there's an animated series or film ever done again, I've had this discussion with a lot of Mask fans. Excuse me. My take on it is that it shouldn't be revised 100% into brand new, totally new universe. I think the original fans fell in love with something about that cartoon. So to my mind, you modernize it, you bring in younger heroes who represent the world of today, who speak in the language of today. Some of them got tats, like Matt doesn't have tattoos, but some of the new heroes do. They're young. They represent the younger generation. But at the same time, keep part of the retro alive. So to my envisioning of it, the animation would resemble the older animation. It would be better, of course, because the new technology, but it would pay homage to the old while progressing to the new. It would be a combination of the two. That's my take on it. And I think that would make it nice for the older fans who've been with it since the beginning. I think they feel more at home and comfortable, and I think more emotionally connected to the show if it was done that way.
Sure. Well, that kind of leads into my next question. We've heard a couple of stories come out about how Hasbro and Paramount, they're trying to create their own cinematic universe with, popular properties that they have the rights to, whether it's G.I. Joe, whether it's Transformers. Now they own the rights to Power Rangers, and Mask does fall under that umbrella. So how would you feel about Hasbro and Paramount creating a shared cinematic universe with those properties, including the Mask characters?
I'm all for it. I mean, first off, it's their right. So my only reaction could be an emotional one. I don't have any say in it, of course, but I'm all for it. If they can bring it back, it's great. It's fun for me. If it's alive again, it's great that it lives on in people's memories. But if it's alive again in some form, hopefully a good form, and they don't mess it up. But if it's alive again in a form that pleases people and entertains people, then I'm thrilled. I'm happy to have that happen, whatever my level of involvement, if any, is. I'm just happy then for the fans that they'll get to climb back on board again and have something to enjoy. So I'm all for it. Again, I just hope they really sit down and think about what it is the fans want. Not just what's fun for them, but what it is that the fan base wants, particularly the fan base that's been with the show all these years and loyal to the show, that they'll honor their wishes in whatever they create. But yeah, I'm all for it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, before I move into my next question, I want to let the audience watching at home know, if you have questions for our guest today, Doug Stone, please leave them in the comments. I will be checking it throughout the show. Once I finish up with a few more questions, we will go to the audience questions, and we'll go from there. So if you want to leave a question for Doug Stone, please drop it in the comments, and we'll be monitoring it, and we will share those with Doug as we get to that point in time. So moving a little bit forward here, outside of the Mask universe and what potentially Hasbro and Paramount are going to be doing, we move forward into a lovely decade I like to call the 1990s. There were so many wonderful things, so many wonderful TV series that were in the 90s, and you had a lot of roles that you portrayed, a lot of voiceover roles that you had. My question for you when it comes to 90s properties, how did you get the role of voicing the character Dragonborg on Beetleborg's Metallics in the 1990s for Fox Kids?
Well, I had an association with Saban. Saban, actually, their company wrote the theme song for Mask. So I was introduced to the Saban people when they were first starting out, still relatively new in LA. Their offices weren't far from the Deke offices in Los Angeles. So I had met them. They actually had some footage that I think was the Power Rangers footage in the 80s that they had purchased and didn't know what to do with. And they knew they had to dub it, but they weren't sure in what format. They didn't have any actors. They were a music company. So they called Deke and said, do you have any actors you can send over that we can pay to try putting voices in these things? And a bunch of us from Mask went over. So I was in the Saban offices way back when, and that's when I found out that I had some aptitude for dubbing, for voice replacement. I kept my association with them. At one time, I was negotiating with them to become their dubbing director when they first, sort of their head dubbing director when they first got into dubbing. Then when I got into my own business and started directing, casting, and adapting dubbing scripts into English, I was a freelancer. I was Doug Stone Enterprises, working as a freelancer for different studios. I also worked for Saban. So I directed at Saban. I directed their first original animation series, Little Mouse on the Prairie, and several other animated dubbed shows as well. So I had a strong association with them and knew all the people behind the scenes, you know, the engineers and the directors and writers. We all knew each other. I was often in their offices. I was also got involved in production of a show where I was overseeing the editing and music and whatever. So I came and went. So when Scott Page, who had been an engineer at Saban, started getting hands-on with the Power Rangers and directing, he called the people he knew to come in. And although I was moving away from dubbing a little bit at that time in my career, because I'd gotten very active in the looping, providing voices for TV shows and films, like Hercules and Xena. I did all those shows. My group, Synchronicity Looping, provided the voices for all those TV shows. Only the principals speak. We were all the monsters, all the villagers, etc. Another story. Well, we can get to that if you want. But I wasn't doing as much dubbing. But when Scott called me, hey, you know, these are old friends. These are people I like and know and I'm comfortable with. He called me in and several different times, and I was brought in to do various monsters and you know, guest characters. So it just fell in my lap, to be honest. Scott would throw up a character like Eye Guy or Dragonborg and say, what do you think? What do you got? What can you give us for an interesting voice? We got this guy to do this monster. And they already had people like Barbara Goodson and Dave Mallow and others doing regular characters, you know, ongoing characters. But I was coming in with others just to do these guest bad guys and monsters, et cetera, et cetera. So he just threw it at me. And the story of how that voice came to be is something else. But the role itself was just handed to me, which was lovely. Sometimes you don't have to audition. Sometimes if the people know you, they'll just throw something at you and say, what have you got? I picture you doing this, which is lovely.
Right. So it's safe to say that those connections that you built up over time and you've had for a number of years led into also you portraying you were voicing over the role of, this is another TV series that was very, very popular in the 90s. And to a certain extent, this property is still very popular today. Power Rangers, more specifically Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, where you voice of one of the monsters, maybe even more that I'm not aware of, Skelecron on Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. What exactly was that experience like?
You know, I have to be honest, I can't specifically remember that particular experience. I had forgotten I did that, and I don't know if it was you who sent me the link.
Yeah, that was me.
Was it you? Yeah, thank you. That was great. It was fun to listen to again. I think they filtered I did too. You know, a deep monster type bad guy thing, you know, from down there. But they obviously filtered it as well because it was almost unrecognizable to me. But there was a time, I don't do that voice often anymore because I don't have strength to maintain it as much as I used to. But there was a time once I learned that placement, how to do that placement, where that became a go-to when doing villains. That you'd put them in there and vary it up for different villains. Did it for a lot of games as well. But I'll tell you that if I can tell you the Dragonborg story, you might enjoy it. He sounds a little like Sean Connery, right?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, with a succulent S. Sure. I was doing a voiceover session some years before, and Michael Sorich, voiceover actor extraordinaire, was at the session. And what I didn't know was Sean Connery had recently been interviewed on Barbara Walters. And something amazing happened. She said to him, is it true, Sean, that you occasionally will strike a woman? And pretty devastating question, but he didn't dodge it. He said, well, Barbara, occasionally a woman needs to be slapped. She, gets out of line or whatever. Like, he actually said that. So it was shocking. I hadn't seen it, but Mike had. So Mike shows up at the session and he says, did you hear so he starts doing a Sean Connery accent. And he starts, of course, having fun with it. Well, I dropped her out of an 8th floor window because she ruined the eggs. Sometimes you have to. So I learned how to do a Sean Connery from this and started to have a lot of fun doing Sean and got quite adept at it. And in fact, I was writing radio sketches for a while to make money. And one of my first sketches I sold was Sean Connery's Accents for Amateurs. Have Sean Connery teach you how to do every accent in the world so that you can be an actor like him. And of course, everything he does sounds, have him teach you Jewish or Japanese. Arigato gozaimasu, round eyes. They all sound alike, Don't be a schmuck, boyo. Buy it today. Oi, bloody vey. So I had that in my pocket. So when I came in and Scott said, what have you got for Dragonborg? Just for fun. I said, well, Dragonborg could be a bad guy who sounds like this, if you like. And I thought Scott would laugh and we'd have a good chuckle. And then we'd go on to find the real voice, of course, because you're not going to do a Sean Connery for a Dragonborg. And he went, no, do it. I said, seriously? We can get away with that? He said, yeah, do it. So I did it, thinking the whole time, well, I'm going to get a call in a week from somebody angry at Saban who's going to say, I don't know what you and Scott were thinking. Get back in here and do a proper book. Didn't happen. And it went to air, and on it went. And so when I see it on fans, they'll say, sounds a little bit like the actor Sean Connery. No kidding. It was very deliberately done that way. So that was Dragonborg. Thank you, Mikey Sorich, for your inspiration.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. There's so many things you could do with impersonating a Sean Connery like accent, or for certain characters or certain properties. It doesn't matter. It could go in a couple of different directions. But my next question.
I've done Danny DeVito for a cartoon recently where he was the mayor. So yeah, you can.
Yeah, there's a lot of directions you can go. My next question for you.
Take those existing voices and use them as launching pads, vary them slightly, and come up with characters.
Sure, absolutely. So my next question for you, you voiced a character by the name of Psycho Mantis for the Metal Gear Solid video game series. What was it like voicing a video game character compared to an animated series or another type of role that you've played over the years? What was your video game experience voicing a Metal Gear Solid character like?
Well, all of those sessions are different. An original animation series is different than dubbing, is different than a game, is different than a commercial, is different than a looping session. They all have the premise is the same, of course, you and a microphone and director, but they're all a little different. Games, you generally are in there alone. A Mask, an original animation series, you generally do in a group session, which is fun. So in Mask, all the other actors were in the room, we're in sort of a horseshoe facing each other as we act. So while reading the line, you can look up at the other actor and almost like you do on stage and on camera, feed off them. And then you've read your line and they can immediately answer in response to what you did. So it's a lot of fun. Psycho Mantis, like a lot of games, was done just with myself and the director. I think I had done a small character for one of the earlier games, one or two soldiers or some minor characters. And that was enough where they gave me the chance to audition for Psycho Mantis. That was not handed to me. That one I had to audition for, being a more major role. And because also they didn't really know what they wanted for sure. They knew they wanted him to sound otherworldly, so he might have an accent. It had to sound like he just wasn't run of the mill, yeah, and not a run of the mill bad guy, not the bad guy from down the street who, decided to take over the world, but rather, even though he was from this planet, there was something different and off about him. So seeing that I do accents a lot, I thought, well, I'm going to try combining some accents. I tried to combine Russian with German, and just come up with something a little bit different that wouldn't sound, and also vocally place him in a place where hopefully nobody had quite done that before. So I did the audition for him very much as he ended up being in the game itself. I didn't vary it much. That was pretty much what I brought to the audition. And fortunately, they saw it the same way as me, where they jumped right on it and went, yeah, that's very cool. That works. I think I had a call back. I can't remember if I'd worked with that director before. So it's not unusual at all when you're new to the director that they want to have a call. They want to direct you once or twice before you do a session with them, so they can be sure that you have a communication, that you're directable, that if they tell you more emotion, more fear, make them more frightening or whatever, that you can instantaneously take their direction and give them what they need. So I did do a call back, and then we did the sessions. And I do remember some of those sessions, actually, because he took a lot of energy. That was really exhausting. Fun, a lot of fun, because he's a cool character, and I still like him. And once in a while, I'll go back on YouTube and I'll look at some of his scenes where I can read your mind, and I know what you're thinking, Snake, and control. I have your controllers, etc. He was fun. So I do remember some of those sessions. A lot of sessions are gone from the memory bank after 38 years in the business, but I do remember Psycho pretty well. And I did commercials as Psycho. I did car commercials as Psycho.
Really?
They're available on YouTube. About 4 or 5 years ago, I got a call from a Florida ad agency. I thought, they don't know what they're doing. They said, we want Psycho Mantis to do some car commercials. And I thought, poor people. I said, you have to get permission from the people who actually created it, not just from the actor. I thought they didn't know what they were doing. They went, we've actually already done some of these commercials, and they named some of the characters and shows. Whoops. They were big shows, so they knew what they were doing. They said, yeah, we can get permission. It's just whether you want to do it or not. Absolutely, I'd be happy to. Union commercials, sure. They're union commercials for specifically for the internet. So they took the scene of Psycho standing on the table where he's addressing Snake, and it's all rewritten, and it matches the mouth to some extent. Enough for the commercial, where he's saying, I know what you want, Snake. You want a car with this option and that option and da-da-da-da. You want a Ford da-da-da-da or whatever. And I did 4 or 5 of those, which was great. And because it was a windfall, I took about 10% and gave it to Rain Corporation. Kitty Bungalow, my charity, the Kitty Bungalow Charm School for Wayward Cats that I'm sit on the board of. I gave 10% of the gig to them as a donation because it was such a pleasant and unexpected surprise. But Psycho has sold out. He does commercials. He's available for commercials.
My goodness. I mean, if you're going to, that's one way to sell a car, by using a voice of a character known as Psycho Mantis from Gear Solid. That is something else. Well, we are going to save some time here.
If you check them out on YouTube, just look for Psycho Mantis car commercial. And I think they really came out well.
I am going to have to look those up. Now, you really got me curious, but I want to let our audience know we are going to save some time here for your questions. We're about to get to them right now. So if you have not had the opportunity and you want to pose a question to our guest today, Doug Stone, please leave it in the comments. I'm going to be checking it throughout the course of the day. We do have we have one comment and one question. I'll share the comment with you first. This is from Terry McIver. He wants to say, hey guys, great to see Doug on Nerd Culture. I've been outbid for the Mask Doug Stone autograph within the online auction, Voices for the Voiceless, all for a great cause. So there you go.
Thank you, Terry.
Lovely thing here. And his question for you, this is also coming from Terry. He says, how do you feel about being a voice of reason and safety during the 1980s with the PSAs, public safety announcements at the end of the Mask shows?
You remember those. Yeah. They weren't. They didn't last for the whole series, but just out of the blue. And I'm not sure if they were getting political pressure to do those or not, or whether that came down from some government agency, or they just felt that it was a fair and good thing to do, which is cool. I had no problem with it. It was fine. As I recall, most of them were done with Scott, with me sort of kneeling down, being the consummate good dad, saying, kids, never put an electrical device that's plugged in into your mouth. Not when you're sitting in the tub. It's a bad idea, right, Scott? Yes, Dad. Whatever they were, but it was fine. It was fine. I liked Matt. Matt was he was the voice of reason and sanity and calmness and decency, and he was like in my generation. I grew up with some like Leave It to Beaver sitcoms and sitcoms where there'd be a dad who'd be sort of the perfect dad, the dad that every kid wanted, that was always sat down with you and explained things to you so you'd understand, didn't yell at you if you made a mistake. Not if he knew you didn't do it on purpose. He'd be reasonable. And Matt was that kind of dad. So I liked Matt, that aspect of Matt, that he was this decent man. He was raising a child alone, which was very admirable. And I think doing a good job, even though Scott got into mischief. And I'm going to tag along with T-Bob on this adventure. But yeah, I was cool with it, and it's fun that you remember it. By the way, on the voiceless, for the voiceless, I think there's 3 mask autographs available there. So if you got outbid on one, try another one. Maybe it's not quite up as high as that one. Mm-hmm. Or if not, get in touch with me. If you'll make a donation to Kitty Bungalow, I'll get you an autograph.
There you go, Terry. Definitely keep that in mind. Man, Terry's coming in hot with these questions. He's got another one for you. Being a voiceover artist, have you seen the dark comedy series known as Toast of London? It's about a voiceover artist turned up to 11.
No, it sounds interesting, but no, I haven't. I haven't heard of it.
Interesting. I'm not too familiar with that either, Terry. If you got a link, feel free to send it to us.
Yeah. Is it on the web or? I'd be interested.
Might be, might not. Not sure. Godo Frito. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. Hey, what do you feel about Facebook mask fan pages? How do you feel about those things?
I love them. I think it's great. I think they're terrific. And in fact, some of the people there on some of the pages I've gotten to know, and some I've met. I don't do a lot of conventions, but I've met some of those folks, the United States ones, at conventions. Nice people, and very supportive. For instance, for Kitty Bungalow, for my charitable efforts, a lot of the mass people have been wonderfully supportive of that because they're good-hearted people and also love animals. So I love it. I mean, I'm thrilled and flattered that the show still has fans this far along. Almost all my interactions with the fans are positive, where people are nice, they're polite. They're kind. They're just curious about things. I try to answer any question I can if it's within my power to answer. There's things I don't know, about the writing, about the production, about some of the behind the scenes things that, as the actors in the show, we wouldn't know. But anything I can answer, I'm happy to answer. And I think it's wonderful that I'm so flattered and thrilled that these fan pages exist and that people still enjoy the show and still want to talk about it and collect toys and rewatch the shows.
Yes. I've been able to see a few episodes here and there of Mask, whether it be through YouTube. I know the series is available on a complete DVD series from Shout Factory. I know they put that out a couple years ago. I saw the cover of that. Really good cover art.
May I just interject that Shout Factory, to give them a thumbs up?
Oh, sure.
The show actually went to Europe many years ago, and we stopped getting paid. There was a confusion with it being sold. It got sold several times, the series, and our contracts didn't follow. They weren't passed along. So we stopped getting paid for the shows, for the re-showings of the shows. Terribly unfair. But Shout Factory, to their credit, when they did the anthology, did contact us, did contact the union, and did see to it that we got some payment for them putting it out. So they played right. So I give them a shout out back to them for being good folks and playing the game right.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I was.
We're not the only ones it's happened to, unfortunately.
Oh dear.
It's happened on other shows. I've heard this from other animation actors, and they did not receive we're supposed to receive either royalties or residuals, and they can get tiny after a number of years. I get stuff where I get 1 penny residual from Return to the Blue Lagoon that I looped on. I get a penny or two, but it's a penny or two that I'm owed for the job I did. So it's obviously very unfortunate that we didn't continue to get payments for the Mask show.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that that situation with Mask, with Shout Factory, getting the DVD set out to the fans and everyone who wants to rewatch the series, share it with their children's children. So many generations. Congratulations on them for doing that. That's great. A little bit of a little peek behind the curtain. There's a convention that I saw that you appeared at, and this is, I think, your first one. This was a few years ago at RetroCon in the state of Pennsylvania in the year 2015. Now, just to give people a little bit of a background, RetroCon is a convention that goes down normally in Oaks, Pennsylvania during the course of the late September month. So it's late September. It's right towards the beginning of fall. Kids are going back to school, but hey, we still want to enjoy our conventions, people. We love it. So RetroCon, I went there last year with a friend of mine. Right. And if you're a fan of 80s and 90s properties, there's a lot of conventions that do this as well, but I just want to say RetroCon is one of the absolute best that I've ever seen put on. The people there are fantastic. The vendors are phenomenal. I've made a few friends with them over the course of time. So I noticed you were at RetroCon. What was that experience like for you back in 2015 at RetroCon in Pennsylvania?
It was 100% positive. As you say, the folks who run it are very nice people. We were treated very well. The fans were great. It was organized well. I had fun walking around, looking at what all the vendors had. Found some Mask stuff that I hadn't seen. I'm always seeing Mask stuff I haven't seen before, which is interesting. But yeah, it was very positive. I also, I had never met Michael Bell. I was there. Michael McConaughey, who's an old friend of mine, was there. And Michael Bell was there, who's a very well-known voice actor. And as it turns out, Michael Bell is also a big animal advocate. So it was terrific. I got to meet him there, and we've bonded since that time. Michael is also in the Voices for the Voiceless auction, bless him. And he's a big supporter of our shelter. So it was positive. I made some good friendships, and it was just a very positive experience, all in all. Terrific.
Yeah, that's great. Well,
it wasn't my first, by the way. The first one I ever went to was a tiny one in L.A.
Oh, sure.
There was a show many years ago called Gigantor, one of the very first animated Japanese shows that had come to North America. When it came back as I think it was called The New Adventures of Gigantor, the gentleman who played Dr. Bob Brilliant, the scientist, either didn't want to or he may have passed away, I don't know, but he didn't reprise his role. And I kind of voice matched him, and I became Dr. Bob Brilliant in The New Adventures of Gigantor, which was fun because it was really touching back to the origins of anime. And there was a Gigantor convention, one of the first conventions maybe that ever happened. I don't know. Certainly the first one I was ever at in the early 90s in LA. So that was the first convention, tiny one that I was ever in, where I met fans for the first time.
Oh, that's great. Well, do have a few questions here. This one, once again, is from Godo Frito. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, sir. Have you heard any news about a Mask movie potentially coming out?
I don't hear anything more than the fans do. I mean, I don't have an in or anything where it's not like I'm sitting in Hollywood where they're Paramount or Universal is ringing my phone saying, "Here's the latest on the Mask." I wish. So I generally get my news from the Mask fans, from the fan bases, etc. So all I know is what you know, probably, that I keep hearing that there's a director attached, that there's a studio attached to the film. But I've heard these kind of stories for years now, and yet nothing seems to happen. So I don't know. I don't know if it's really going to happen or if it's just them throwing it out there to see what kind of a reaction they get and to see if they feel it's worth it based on reaction. I wish I knew more, but as I say, I'm in the same boat as the fans. I don't have any inside information, unfortunately.
Sure. Absolutely. We understand. This question's coming from our colleague in the nerd culture team, Travis Troller. He asks, got to say, Psycho Mantis is the best character. Those car commercials are golden. But I have to ask, what is your mental process or tips that you can give when creating a voiceover for a character?
Well, it comes down to acting. In other words, I started in theater. And you're looking at the motivations of a character. You're looking at where they're from, their physicality, how do they move. If you can, in the case of animation, you want to see drawings of them. Are they bent over? And when I did Bruce, when I was doing Mask, I had 8 characters. Sometimes they'd have to speak to each other, and I liked not stopping and just doing one character at a time. I liked going from one to the next to the next. I would physically change. If I was doing Bruce Sato, I would be bent forward, my chest cavity forward, my hands like this, doing Bruce, because I wanted my body to reflect his mental attitude. He was humble, even though he was very wise and had much to say. He didn't feel that way about himself or put that forward. When I did Matt Tracker, I stood back with my shoulders back, my chest cavity open to let power come out of my voice and make him a stronger character. So you can adjust your body for the character. You want to know their motivations. Bear in mind that everybody thinks they're the hero. Even Psycho Mantis, in his mind, everything he does is justifiable. Everything he does is the right thing to do, the only thing to do under those circumstances. So I believe if you're playing what would be called a villain, that you don't, unless it's the kind of cartoon where they're twisting, where it's supposed to be really silly villain. But in the case of something like Psycho Mantis, I think you play him straight. You play him where he 100% believes in himself, in his motivations, in his right to do everything he does. Again, your body stance counts, the amount of energy you give. In the case of Psycho, I used my body a lot. When I'm doing fight scenes in films and TV shows, replacing looping or whatever, if I have fights to do, I don't stand like that, fighting, doing fight sound. Yeah! You've got to move. You've got to engage your body in it. So it's engaging yourself totally. It's like crying on cue. The other day I had to, I was doing a show for Netflix, dubbing, and my character's wife passes away, and I just found out as the script went down, oh, my wife's passed away. I've got a minute or 30 seconds to prepare that I'm about to start weeping. So you've got to be able to go to places, emotional places in yourself, and you practice this as an actor, emotional places where you can cry on cue, laugh on cue, be angry on cue, etc. You need to have a reservoir of emotional spots that you can go to where you've stored these things and you know how to access them. So it's all part of creating a character. And then, of course, practicing your voice with your voice, practicing vocal placement and whether you're putting it out through your nose. It's Joe Pesci and you're putting it in the front of your mouth. Or if you're putting your teeth back there. So there's a lot of different factors involved in it. I'm not a singer, but I think singers have a good step ahead because they know how to. Stage acting helped me because you know how to project to hit the back of the stage without shouting. So learning how to use your instrument, it's like it's any guitar or any instrument or a singer, learning your instrument, learning about the character, and inhabiting them.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. Great advice. Do appreciate that. Go to Frito. I think we've touched on this earlier, but I'll bring it up. How does it feel to be the voice actor of one of the greatest toy franchises of the 1980s?
Well, I wish I had a piece of it. I wish I got a penny for every toy that got sold. It's just a fun thing, like an ego stroke. I mean, it's fun, and emotionally it's fun. It's nice to know that it means something to people. And that as far as that's the series overall. As far as the toys go, as I say, I'm not, as a voice actor, I'm not a part of that. We didn't get we don't get a piece of anything that's sold. That's an entirely different part of the series entirely. So it's just the vicarious. Is it vicarious? Is that the word I'm looking for? The thrill of association, of just saying, hey, that's so cool. They've got a mask toy, or hey, look, there's, especially when you see your own character as a toy. I have to tell you, that was fun. That's really cool. As a voice actor, the first time that you see a character you created and it's a stuffed toy or a little plastic toy with movable parts, or it's sitting in a vehicle or whatever, that's really cool. That's a great feeling, and it makes you sort of feel like, hey, I made it. I'm a toy. Look, I'm a toy. That's maybe one of the coolest parts as far as a voice actor perspective goes.
Sure. Our next question comes from our friend of the Great White North, Willow. Who were your favorite actors to work with during the course of your career? Boy, Willow, I think that's going to be a very long list.
Hi, Willow, from Canada. How's it going, eh? Sorry, my Canadian roots just came out there.
It's okay.
Boy, oh, there's so many nice people. Yeah, as you said, that would be a very long answer. So many nice voice actors, so many good people that I've had the opportunity to work with. You know, actors tend to be sensitive people. That's why they get into acting. They like to express themselves. They have the ability to get in touch with their emotions, and so they can be very nice people to be around. Very kind people, very giving people. Let me tell you instead some famous people I've met that were very nice, just for a change up. Gosh, I've got a list somewhere of all the people. I've met Harrison Ford, I've met John Lithgow, I've met Charlton Heston, I've met lots and lots of famous people. John Lithgow, if you know who that is, Third Rock Around the Sun, et cetera, et cetera. He came into a voiceover session we were doing where we were supplying voices for a TV film he had done. I think he played either Churchill or Roosevelt. It was something in the 90s. And he came in the room and we were all, oh my goodness, it's John Lithgow. I'd seen him on Broadway. You know, what are we going to do? What are we going to say? Also met Anthony Hopkins, and he was a very nice man too. So Lithgow comes in the room, goes, "Hi, everybody, I'm John. Hi." I go, "Hi, I'm Doug." "Hi, Doug. Hi, Sue." Hi. Says hello to all of us individually. He's really nice. He's sweet. He's watching us work. I'm nervous, but he's watching us work. We have to improvise when we're looping, as well as fill in voices, et cetera, et cetera. So they finally say, "John, we're ready to start working with you. We're going to give the group a break." And he says to all of us, "Amazing work, you guys. Just fantastic. I don't know how you do it, how you can come up with these voices and improvise. Just wonderful watching your work. Terrific. Thank you." Well, I was 6 feet. I'm still 6 feet off the ground. That was John Lithgow that said that to us. He didn't have to be that kind to us. Compared to him, who are we? But that was where he came from as a performer. That was his heart, you know. So I have very fond memories of him. Anthony Hopkins, I was at Sony, and we had a very large group again looping, and they put us in a private dining room that you can't really see. It's behind a mirrored wall. They had to slide it open, and we went in. We came out, and we see there's Anthony Hopkins having lunch with Steven Spielberg. Ooh. So I'm 20 feet away, and I thought, I'm just going to take a mental picture. This is cool. But one of the actresses I was with said, "I'm going over." I said, "Oh, don't do it. Don't interrupt them. You could get in trouble. You don't do it." She said, "I don't care. I have to tell him that I love him, that he's my." I said, "Oh, well, I'll hold your coat. I'll trail behind you so that I won't get in trouble. But I want to hear this." So she goes over to the table and says, "I'm sorry to interrupt," and starts to tell him how wonderful he is. He goes, "Oh, no, please, no, stop. What was that room you were in? I've never seen that room before. What is that?" And he gets up and he says, "Will you show me?" Well, I'm going to go. So the three of us walk over to the room, and we slide open the door and we show him the room, and he's looking at it. And that was all. He just wanted to know. He just never seen it. He'd been coming there for ages. But anytime he got praise, he went, "No, please, no. Fascinating. Well, thank you for showing it to me. I had no idea it existed." Interesting. Yes, I guess a large group. Sure. Well, bye. And off he went and sat down again. Sweet as could be, or whatever. So some of these people, Harrison Ford, I met. Some of these people are just as nice as can be and unassuming as can be. Harrison Ford drives an old station wagon when he's in LA, so nobody will recognize him. He parked it at the studio where we were, and it's this beat-up old station wagon that you'd never think Harrison Ford would be in, so he doesn't get recognized or seen when he goes places. He was looking for menus, and I was sitting around waiting, and he kind of came in, and he said, "Do you know where the menus are?" And I said, "Let me try to find them for you." And then I said, "Geez, I don't know. Let me find a staff person." He said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you worked here." I said, No, I'm a voiceover guy. I'm going to be working there." "No worries. I got time. I'm kicking around. Let me see if I can find somebody." Just a regular guy. I wanted to talk to him about carpentry, but we didn't get a chance. I used to make furniture when I was young.
Oh my goodness. That is wow. Those stories are just incredible. Next question comes from, once again, Terry. You're just on fire with the questions today. How did you get involved with Kitty Bungalow? How did that come about?
Well, when I first got to LA, I wasn't working as much, and so I did a little bit of volunteer work here and there. I was involved in a SAG program, after-school program, reading for kids to promote literacy, reading to children after school. And my then wife and I, both being animal lovers, dogs and cats and all critters, started to do a little bit of volunteer work at a shelter near us, which was the first time I ever bottle-fed a baby kitten. And It was like the most incredible. The mom had been in a fire and saved all the babies. She'd been burnt, but she saved her babies, bless her heart. And I'm bottle feeding because she couldn't lactate at that point. I'm bottle feeding this tiny little thing, and it just made the hair stand up on my neck for how empowering it was. So skip forward. I got busy with my career, couldn't volunteer. We're in the 2000s, and I've slowed down. I don't direct anymore. I don't cast anymore. I don't have a loop group. I act still, but my life is much quieter. And I thought I'd like to get involved in charitable work again. I'm arthritic, and so I can't work with dogs, with large dogs. My knees are bad. But I could work with cats, of which I have several. So I looked around for a cat rescue. And, don't let the name escape me, Fred Willard. I used to do improvisational comedy for a living as well. I've done a lot of different things. And so I had associations with the late Fred Willard, wonderful actor, who's just recently passed. And by coincidence, I get an email that says Fred Willard is acting in Cat Beret to support Kitty Bungalow, a non-profit, non-kill cat shelter. And I went, that's what I'm looking for. I'm trying to find a no-kill cat shelter that I could maybe volunteer with. And if Fred Willard's involved with it, it must be cool. So I didn't get to the show that year, but I did reach out to Kitty Bungalow because of that, and became a volunteer doing a couple of shifts a week, just taking care of the kitties. Then because I'm very organized, I saw that they didn't really have a great volunteer program as far as the organizational organization of it went. So I became the non-paid volunteer coordinator for a couple of years, and then eventually joined the board and work on fundraising. So that's the story. And this is my 8th year. I got involved in 2012, the summer of 2012.
Wow. Congratulations. That is absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Go to Frito. He says, or asks, have you ever worked with fellow voice actor by the name of Peter Cullen, aka Optimus Prime?
Optimus Prime. No, I have not had that pleasure. I obviously know who Peter Cullen is and greatly admire his work. But no, I may have been on auditions. I mean, that's where I met Mark Hamill, was on auditions. I never did a show with him. So I may have met Peter at auditions. It's possible. I met some of my heroes at auditions, voiceover heroes at auditions, and people that you might not even have heard of when I first got here. There's a gentleman who's passed named Hamilton Camp, who was a folk singer, who then became a TV actor on shows like He and She, et cetera, et cetera. And I actually had one of his record albums from when I was 14 or 15, and I'm new to LA in the late 80s, and there he is at an audition with me. And then I ended up working with him on when we were looping The Grinch Steals Christmas, or whatever that was called, the Jim Carrey film. He was working on it. So it was cool for me because he'd been a childhood hero. So you never know who you'll meet, but I haven't met Mr. Cullen.
Oh, I see.
I
see. Well, we're coming towards the top of the hour here. We're going to start to kind of wrap things up. So my next question for you, do you have any future projects that you can tell us about? Any voiceover projects you can tell us about?
Nothing I'm really promoting. We generally sign non-disclosure agreements when we do projects. And I am doing work right now, but in all cases, I've signed non-disclosure agreements. So I can't really talk about it. I'm still doing games. I still do a bit of original animation. I've gotten back to where my beginnings were because of the pandemic. I'm working at home for studios, and I'm doing a lot of dubbing again. So I'm dubbing on a lot of Netflix projects. Netflix has signed a union agreement, and a lot of foreign products being brought over, animated and live action, that we can dub, that I was doing in studios that I'm now dubbing at home. So I've got a role in a current project that I'll be doing 2 sessions with for them next week, but can't talk about yet. But I sort of graduated to the wise old man, or the priest, or the mean senior villain, et cetera, in all of these projects, which is great. I'm just thrilled that I'm still working, and I'm meeting a lot of young directors who like my work and who don't know me from the 80s because they might not have been born at that time, who are now getting to know me as an older actor and bringing me on board for those roles. So that's great. It just keeps the ball rolling.
I see. Well, tell the fans, all of us here, one more time, tell us about the charity work you are doing for Kitty Bungalow.
Thank you. Sure. Well, it's called Voices for the Voiceless. And again, voice actors from all realms of voiceover, from games, dubbing, anime, everything, on camera work. And they've all donated swag, autographed items, or they may have donated their voices to do outgoing messages. It can all be bid on Bidding Owl. And all the proceeds go to the Kitty Bungalow Charm School for Wayward Cats, of which I used to be the hall monitor, and now I sit on the board. It's a school theme because we take these little kitties, teach them how to be polite and how to be social, and get them adopted into loving homes far from the scary streets. So if you do go to it, know that any money that you spend there on fun items is all going to help these little animals, 100% of it. Voices for the Voiceless.
Absolutely. And where can the fans follow you on social media to keep up to date with the charity work you're doing, as well as potential new projects you got coming out?
I don't tend to promote myself much. I don't have a Twitter presence or an Instagram presence because I'm sort of coming to the last quarter of my career, and because I'm known by producers and directors, et cetera, I don't worry too much about how many hits I get on sites and whatever. I don't have to do what some of the younger actors have to do to promote themselves in order to stay in the public eye. So the only presence I have in social media is my Facebook page, and I don't do a lot of self-promotion there. It's mainly animal. If you're interested in animal advocacy, you might want to check out my Facebook page, or just fun and silliness, because I generally just promote comedic items there to cheer people up during these difficult times we're going through. And I post things that promote my animal work, or the Kitty Bungalow work I do. So I don't have a big presence on social media.
Oh, that's okay. We completely understand that. But we want to take this opportunity to thank Doug Stone, our special guest, for being with us today. We really appreciate it. My name is Ryan of Nerd Culture. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RyanRPM5. Check out my podcast. It's called The Nerdcast. I talk about movies past and present on Anchor, Google, Spotify, wherever you download your podcast. You can find me there. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe to all forms of our social media and our YouTube channel, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at It's Nerd Culture. And check out our YouTube channel. A lot of videos are up right now. We got new ones coming your way very soon. Thank you all for joining us for this special episode of our interview series with Doug Stone. Doug, thanks for being here. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your weekend, folks. We will see you on the flip side. Have yourselves a great weekend. We'll see you all next time.
Stay safe, everybody.